Hey everyone, how's it going? I hope you're doing well. I'm doing well because today we're talking about music. Today we're continuing our deep dive into the discography of Sum 41. Now, dating when this video was put out, they recently announced that their last album that they're planning to record, Heaven X Hell, is going to be due out spring 2024. Maybe that kind of kickstarted me into action, being like, okay, let's get on to this. I've been listening to Chuck on and off for a while now, kind of thinking about my thoughts, but time to put digital ink to digital paper. Like let's get this through. So today we're going to look at the fourth studio release from Sum 41 titled Chuck. Here's the CD here. Show off the back for y'all. I got your track listing, all that good stuff. This was put out October 12th, 2004, Aquarius in Canada, Island Records in the States. And this is the first new Sum 41 album for me. As I've mentioned, I've listened to Half Hour of Power, All Killer No Filler, Does This Look Infected? And they were all great albums. I loved them when I initially listened to them, and some of them have held up more than others. My opinions kind of changed. But generally speaking, I was always confused, thinking like, well, why had I not really listened to Sum 41 going forwards? I really enjoyed it, and I think I discovered why. That makes it sound like I don't like this album. I actually really, really like this album, but there's a few things on here that maybe make me think like, I can see it's definitely not like a wheels have fallen off kind of album, but you can see the chinks in the chain starting to form and things like that. Um, Broadly speaking, though, this is a much heavier album. That said, there's a lot of ballads on here as well. So you get this dichotomy of really metal inspired. In fact, sometimes I feel like punk is the secondary influence on here, and it's more of a hard rock, hard alternative, metalish album with some punk inspiration. And then power pop punk ballads, because why not? This was also the last album before rejoining the band in 2015, the last album for Dave Brownsound Baksh, who would leave the band 2 years after this album comes out, so before Underclass Hero, citing musical differences, wanting to explore more genres, which again makes me think that there had to have been some maybe label pressure behind the scenes or something, because this seems very experimental. And then so he goes on to make his own kind of solo effort. And when you listen to that, that's super medley, like what you have on here. So it makes me wonder what was going on from the label potentially, or maybe it was internal, but who knows? But he would rejoin the band in 2015. So Chuck, it peaked at number 2 on the Canadian album charts, number 10 for the US Billboard, and it also won the 2005 Juno for Rock Album of the Year. The album title, Chuck, seems kind of weird as well. I'll show off the album artwork. It's one of those, I'll show the CD as well. Whoa, what is that? What's a CD? It's like a Blu-ray, which is kind of like a DVD. It's one of those kind of poster inserts, which I'm never a massive fan of, because how often do people take it out? But here you go. Here is the album art. Really heavy. And again, I think speaks, I wonder if you can hear me through that. Speaks to kind of the power of the album. So during the recording of this album, make sure I put this back in. War Child Canada had worked with Sum 41 to record a documentary called Rocked Sum 41 in the Congo. It's not a concert DVD. I don't know why they went with Rocked, probably just because it's these rock stars, but it's not Sum 41 going to play a concert in the Congo. It's War Child Canada as a NGO using sort of pop figures and figures in pop culture to bring to light a lot of the work that they do. So they were focusing around child soldiers being used in the Congo, around mining and the conflicts that occur there because of that. So during that filming, the hotel that Sum 41 was staying at suddenly fell under attack. So a UN peacekeeper, Chuck Pelletier, kind of helped them survive and get out. So they dedicated, actually in the liner notes, they dedicate this album to Chuck, as saying he's all that in a bag of chips. So you know what, Chuck, you're all that in a bag of chips. The lyrical content, so not just musically, is also a lot darker. And I think you get a lot of that coming out of, I mean, you see it in the artwork. It's coming out of the continued war on terror, political polarization in 2004, as well as kind of what they were doing in the Congo. You can watch the trailer and clips of it online, and you do see that how impacted they actually were by that experience and how genuine and heartfelt they are with that. So with that, what are we getting? We're getting this album that's sort of transitionary, and I know you can say that about a lot of albums, but it feels like a transition in that you don't know where they might go after this. You feel that push and pull that I mentioned before. But that said, it was super, super popular. And I was kind of looking at the list of like, well, why did I not continue with this? So I've got a couple of reasons I jotted down. I was like, I think these are the keys why, and then we'll get into a track by track breakdown. The choices, the two first singles, known as To Blame and Pieces, just sound a lot like what was coming out of the time. So like, well, what else is coming out of this time? So if you look up a list of, pop punk and alt albums that came out, you get American Idiot by Green Day, Three Cheers for Sweet Revenge by My Chemical Romance, Still Not Getting Any by Simple Plan, Chronicles of Life and Death by Good Charlotte. And you can see we're kind of hitting that, the topping off of that curve of the initial wave of sort of emotive and emotional pop punk. Boulevard of Broken Dreams, which I'm going to reference later, is kind of the standard pop punk ballad in this space. My Chemical Romance sort of, along with Panic at the Disco, kind of corner the market for like overly theatrical alternative rock, things like that. So with that, you're kind of wondering like, okay, the singles that were chosen aren't super representative of the album as a whole. And then when you think about what else is out there, it's just maybe a glut in the market. So this sold really, really well. It was a very successful album, but maybe that's partly why for fans that weren't already massive, massive fans of the band, we're kind of getting their fill of pop punk or skate punk or whatever elsewhere. All right, track by track, let's get into this. So you start with an intro, which is common for a lot of their albums. This one seems a lot deeper. This one seems a lot more mature and ambient than the other ones. From there, you go into No Reason, which is kind of a burst of high energy. I really, really like it. It's a really rebellious sounding anthem with some really cool riffs. The song is sort of about the feelings of disillusionment and rebellion, and it's a good kind of intro piece to the album. Gives you a good first impression for what we're going to get into. So We're All to Blame, that's the first single chosen for the album. It was released August of 2004, so a couple months before the album comes out. Derek Whibley said the song is about war, death, fear, and the corporate power or the concern over kind of corporations implementing their will, I think really inspired by what they witnessed in the Congo. It's sort of a melodic hardcore track with a lot of metal influence. Again, if you're talking about metal influence, frequently they'll cite kind of Iron Maiden and a lot of those scary, those dual guitar bands being one of their citations. I would say Metallica on this album. It's certainly one of the songs sounds like you could swap out singers, you might get a Metallica song out of it. The next is Angels with Dirty Faces. That's a bit of a slow build track that I would say has more in common with the heavier alt rock groups of the time. It's not bad. It just, again, feels like, okay, where are we going with this album? Then you get Some Say, which is the track after that, released in February 2005 as the third single. It was released in Canada and Japan only with a music video, but not elsewhere. It's when they played it live on the Go Chuck Yourself live album, which is a pretty cool live album if you can find it. Derek states the song is about your very, very confused parents. So there you go. It's an okay ballad, but it followed up Pieces, which was the second single, and we'll get there. So it's like, why are you following up a ballad with a ballad? And in terms of being the ballads on the album, Pieces, I think, is much more effective and successful. So there you go. The Bitter End, I like this one a lot. This is one of my favorite tracks on the album. If you're not sure what to listen to, you just want to check out a few songs, I think The Bitter End is one to do. It feels like a Metallica song with, I mean, there's a lot of thrash guitar inspiration, but even just the way the chorus, like how the chorus hits hard on the name of the song, The Bitter End. It feels like it could be a Metallica song from something maybe like Saint Anger without the trash can drumming. Open Your Eyes is next, and it's another heavier track, and you're like, oh, maybe we're hitting some kind of stride. Last track was good. This one fits along with that thematically. Maybe a bit more melodic punk, but there's still sort of an artistic continuation we're getting. You think that, and then we go to the track. What track are we on now? Track 8, Slipping Away. And it's another ballad. And you're like, okay, how many ballads that sort of accomplish the same thing musically and thematically are we going to get on here? Is this label fodder? Are they trying to appease to the fans? And especially there's so many bands out there doing that thing. There weren't a lot of pop punk bands doing kind of harder metal inspired stuff, at least on a major label kind of format. So why not stick with that? Following that, we go I'm Not the One, which is a melodic rock song that could have been done by a lot of the rap rock inspired alt bands of the time. I want to say System of a Down, but maybe not with that quality and sincerity. But you kind of think of Evanescence, and when I say that, I can only think of their hits. I don't really know the familiarity with that band, but I'm assuming their other tracks are similar to that sort of rap rock light inspired angst metal thing, and this feels like that. The chorus is good. The chorus feels like a nice fun Sum 41 track, but then the verses are a bit of a push and pull. Following that, we get Welcome to Hell. That's a really cool skate punk song. There's sort of a nice crossover thrash appeal, and it's like, okay, we're back. And so when I think about push and pull on this album, you're like getting all these weird ballads, metal stuff to skate punk. We're covering a lot of musical styles, but the metal successfully, because now we go to Pieces, which was the second single of the album, released November 15th, 2004. So the first single put out after the album's release. So potentially for some, the first single they may have heard from the album. It sounds like, just in terms of the melody, it sounds a lot like Boulevard of Broken Dreams. I should have looked up when that hit exactly to compare the timeline. But Boulevard of Broken Dreams is a better pop punk ballad. Pieces just feels like that again, or if it came first, potentially it came first. Based off the fact we're coming out in October, it probably came first. But they can't really compete with Green Day, unfortunately. Yeah, so if you're going to pick like American Idiot, you're going to go with American Idiot over Chuck. There's No Solution is an emotional alt rock track. It's sort of a mid-paced rocker that feels like a really nice way to say, okay, we're starting to wind down the album in a nice way. And then 88, which is a super cool closer. Again, one of the best tracks on the album. I'd say this is the second track you should listen to, and I'd recommend, if you're not going to check out the rest of the album, check this out, because it kind of takes everything they've done so far on the album, the ballad stuff, the skate punk stuff, metal stuff, and sort of puts it all together successfully, which is weird because it's like, so you can do it well. Let's stick with that. There is like some heavy thrash parts about the 2/3 of the way through the song. It's an awesome. There's chunky guitar riffs. There's slower kind of build-ups and bridges. It's just such a cool track that I'm like, it's frustrating. Why isn't the rest of the album like that? It's not to say you can't do ballads. Ballads are great. Pick one or two. Because we're at 13 tracks. I mean, this is a shorter album. So you don't really have a lot of fat to cut out, but it's like, got to do something here to because I think they're trying to appeal to too many people, and obviously they did it well enough to have a really great selling album. But I think we're going to see later they're not sure where to go, and I think we will see the wheels starting to fall off until they kind of reorient themselves, maybe potentially 8 years, almost a decade later. That said, I do think Chuck is a really good album. I think Does This Look Infected is more consistent, but I think the highs on this album really do it for me. The kind of metal riffage, the not so much Maiden inspired dual guitar stuff, but more that chunky thrash influence is really, really cool on here. And there's a lot of really cool stuff. There's just also stuff that makes me think either internally as a band or label-wise they were getting pressure. However, all that said, we're going to wind down the review now of Chuck, their fourth release in 2004. And we're going to look ahead to Underclass Hero, which I haven't heard yet, haven't even started. I seem to remember, what was the single I think was called Underclass Hero. And I vaguely remember the video and being like, isn't this just all killer, no filler? So I'm wondering if that's where we start to see the wheels fall off. Anyway, Chuck, check it out. It's a great album, I think. And there's a lot going on there. Until next time, have a good one.